Welcome to Tactics Tutorial. So I'm going to show you today some basic UV unwrapping for skinning purposes. As you can see, I'm in Blender right now. I have the new screen open with the beautiful cube placed in the middle of it. What we're going to do is first mark some seams so that the computer knows what polygons it's okay to separate and which ones it needs to keep together. So let's go ahead and go into edit mode, and then we'll actually want to go into edges mode, and we'll press A to unselect everything so we don't have anything selected. What we're going to do is we want to think of a way that this is going to unwrap itself, and you'll see how it does it in a moment. Go ahead and click the seams like I'm doing here so that these four sides, the vertical edges, are all selected, and then you want to hit Control E and mark seam under Edge Specials. What this will do is, you notice it changed it into a sort of this multicolor orange and black lines, and what that means is the computer knows it's okay if these edges are not connected when we actually do the UV. To further help it, we'll have to mark a few other seams though, otherwise it'll do some weird stretching when it's unwrapped. So I'll select these three on the top and mark those. You notice that this one is unmarked. That means when it's unwrapped, this top one as well as this side one will still be connected. And we need to do something similar for the bottom as well, so otherwise they won't be wrapped properly. Or actually, you know, it's already, let's see here, this one is unwrapped, so we will mark no more. We're good to go, I believe. One last thing we'll want to do so we can actually see the results of our unwrap is to change to a window that has UV settings. In order to do that, you can find a little split between these two windows here where your cursor changes. Right click, select split area, and then you get a line. I'm not holding on any buttons, it's just there until I click with my left mouse button. I've got a split window. I can rotate, do whatever I want in these two windows. What I want to do is take my right hand window, it's just my own habit, my own preference. You could be the left one if you prefer, and change it to a UV image editor window. Now, there's no UV layout selected in here, and that's fine because we haven't designed one yet. We wouldn't want anything in there. Don't worry about it if you mess up. You can always redo the UV and it'll just reset everything. Also, we can practice this as many times as we want. Now, to unwrap the UV, we actually have to select all the polygons we want to have unwrapped. If the polygon isn't selected when we do the unwrap, it won't be included in the unwrap. You'll have to unwrap it separately or redo the whole thing. To actually unwrap, you'll want to press U to get you the UV calculation, and we're just going to do a basic unwrap, and it lays it out in our UV editor to the right. Notice again, these are all yellow and purple over here. It means again that they're selected. You can actually deselect various pieces of the UV editor. Again, like using the A button, and it'll do whatever you want with them. You can grab them, you can scale them, you can rotate them, you can scale them back up, do whatever you want. This is useful because you can make the different pieces take up different amounts of space depending on how much detail is needed for them on the texture. Something that gets a lot of viewings, maybe the top of a roof of a house or something, could have more detail by taking up more space, therefore it gets more pixels. Something less detailed, maybe a very small post or something like that, you could shrink down and have it take up less space on the map by giving it a little tiny corner. That all depends on your preference, and it's a matter of skill and practice. Now, one thing you'll notice, if we unselect the object in the 3D menu, we're still in edit mode over here, you will not get any UVs over there. What you can actually do is change it to face mode, for instance. This is really helpful. And any face you select, or series of faces, will be shown on the UV map, and then from there you can select them separately. So for instance, if you have an object that has a lot of complex shapes to it, and you only want to have a small portion of the UV shown at a time, only select the faces you want to work with on the UV. This will also be helpful if there's a lot of overlapping or complicated parts side by side, and you need them to be easily recognizable. For instance, right here I've got 3 squares shown instead of all the squares. That would mean I could grab a separate square if I wanted to. This one, for instance. Move it, rotate it, and it's now over here while the rest of the pieces where they originally were. select all the individual vertices and other parts and do whatever you want with them. Finally, the last thing you want to do, once you have your UV laid out like you want, is going to go to UV's scripts, and you want to save the UV face layout. And what this will do is actually give you the option of the size. This is going to be a square image, so this 1024 shown right here is actually 1024 pixels by 1024 pixels. How the width of the wireframe, in other words, all these little wires here between the vertices, how thick of those do you want? You could have it greater than 1 pixel, or right now set it for 1. 1 is usually adequate because that means it's easy for you to tell exactly where the boundaries are when you're drawing out on top. Wrap, if you want it to scale, stretch, however. Do you want all the faces or only the selected ones? Depending on what you're doing, you may want that. You can select only, or you can use object and file name. You can save it as SVG instead of a targa. You can fill in the faces if you export as a SVG. And you can also edit the file in an external program, assuming you have everything set up properly. If you hit OK, it'll just ask you for a file name. And of course, you can also locate it in a different location if you like. Say, for instance, your C drive, just to make things easy. And then usually what you want to do is, what I like to do is, for instance, cube and UV layout. Do that so that I can always identify what the file is, because when I actually edit it, I'll save it as a cube skin. That way I know what the original layout was, and I can pull it up any time. I have my own backup of it. You can re-export at any time, but certainly it's handy to have the original. And if you click save, it's saved. And then I could, for instance, go into Gimp, let it start up, of course, and file, open, go to my local drive where I saved it, and I have a target file at 1020 by 1024. You can see this up here with all the outlines of the things there. And in fact, if you zoom in, you can see even the vertices are identified with a little red dot as opposed to the black dot. Best thing to do from this point, and this is a whole other tutorial for another time, but the best thing to do for this point is go ahead and create a new layer that's transparent and leave the UV in the background, and then just draw over top of it so there's never any confusion. Hope this helps.